All right, everybody ready? Yeah, everybody's, yeah.
Yeah, we're ready. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. All right, welcome everybody. I'm Amanda Hosenfeld. Welcome to Compliance Line's 3 ways to make issue intake and case management more effective. Just some logistics for the webinar. We want to thank you very much for joining us. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So if at any time you have any questions, GoToWebinar has this really neat function on it that allows you to ask questions. There's also a chat function. If you don't want to ask a question, you just want to make a comment, you can do so right there. We are recording this, so we are going to be able to send that recording and the slide deck out to everyone so that you can share it, post it, like it, link it. And right now we're going to jump right in. So again, thanks for joining us. I'm going to take a moment and introduce our host. Giovanni Gallo is the co-CEO and Chief Development Officer at Compliance Line. He is a real innovator, and he's also a thought leader in the industry. He helps us develop new products, and that seeds his deep passion for helping Compliance Line and clients improve their culture. He also likes to serve people, and so he wants to make sure everybody's serving everyone better. Giovanni lives and breathes compliance, and I can personally say that is accurate. And his goal is just to make the world a better place. So Gio, thank you so much for hosting today.
Yeah, so glad to be here, Amanda. Thank you.
No problem.
So welcome to 3 ways to make issue intake and case management more effective. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 main areas. That's around engagement, adaptability, and people, and we're going to be digging into those over the next 30 to 45 minutes. So we're going to be talking about some processes and habits that you may be dealing with, and we're really excited to get to some actionable ways for you to change behavior and profoundly impact the mission at the company you work for and the culture that everyone lives in every day. So I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate you all sharing some of your day with us, and I'm excited to not just talk about how to make you more effective, but really to get past kind of the check the box types of things that can happen sometimes when we're so busy and we have so much on our plate, but really to help people see the leverage that issue intake and case management can be to make a safer, more caring, and more effective corporate culture. So we're going to start talking about some big myths that I imagine the people on this webinar probably don't believe these things, but these are some things that lead some people to realize the potential of issue intake and case management. And then we're going to talk about those 3 key ways that I mentioned. So I encourage you, as we start going through this, I would love it if everyone who is part of this webinar is thinking about what is one thing that you can walk away from this webinar today with as a next action step to serve your team better, to make a difference in the culture that you live in and that you're a leader in, and that you can take to your team to make things better in 2020. So let's get going. So we're going to get to some common mistakes and areas to improve. And first, we're going to kind of talk about some of these common myths. So one thing that we see people deal with is they think that the issues that they get reported to them are all the issues, and they maybe don't get a lot, and they say, oh, well, there must not be a lot of things going wrong in our organization because we don't hear about a lot of them. We're going to be talking about some ways that that might not be true. Some people might think, hey, we're honest, we care, employees trust us, and they're going to speak up if they see something, and that's not always true. Some people think, hey, we have a great culture here. Our people are going to be comfortable telling things to their manager. So if we're not hearing about it at the compliance and HR level, then maybe, it's most likely people are working it out with their managers. Some people think that this concept of anonymous reporting, it just makes the work harder. And, as with a bunch of these myths, that's just kind of a myopic view of the trade-off that happens when you don't allow people to report anonymously. And then finally, some people think that an intake method is an intake method, and whether someone's in person or on a hotline or on a web, hey, it's all just the start of an investigation and I'm going to take it from there. And really, as we start talking about making these things more effective, we'll start seeing how the way that you do intake makes the world of difference, not only in the workload of the compliance and HR team, but really in the entire culture of your business. So we're going to start with a poll. You want to lead us through that, Amanda?
Yeah, we're going to pop up a poll that's where do you think your biggest area of improvement is? So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to engage in our webinar by launching this poll. Just go ahead and make your choice. Your options are engagement, adaptability, investigations, people, or if you have an other, do let us know in the comments. While our participants are responding, Gio, is there one of these that you see as a need more than others? Or is that something you're going to talk about later, and so I shouldn't have asked that question right now?
No, all questions are welcome. We're all about transparency. Reality is our friend. So it's hard to pick just one, and I don't want to be leading people. I want everyone to be thinking about what matters to you and what do you think it is. But I'm going to touch on two just quickly. I think that at the front end, that engagement piece is something that people have a lot of room for improvement on. And there are a lot of challenges that lead to low engagement with the compliance efforts. But I think that that's one where people have a lot of area of improvement. You know, the next two are definitely ones that people have gaps in. That's why we're talking about them today. But really, I'm most passionate about the last one. So, you know, this is about putting people and putting that human element at the heart of compliance. And I think that that is really the frontier that this industry and ethics experts are really pushing the world toward, is that compliance is culture. Compliance is not just about making sure we follow these rules and don't get in trouble, but is really a strategic leverage, not just to help move the company forward, but really to take care of your people. And from all of the compliance leaders that I meet, you know, we're all in this to help people. So you know, I love that last one.
Great. So we have 70% of our participants have engaged in this poll. That's really awesome. So we have one comment that hit all of the above, and then I'm going to share. So thanks for that comment. I'm also going to share the results. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results with everybody. So it looks like 38% state that the area of improvement is investigations, followed really closely by a 30% for engagement.
Cool. Well, that's great to know. We're going to cover all of these. So even if you're in one of those others that wasn't leading the pack, we're excited to give you some actionable steps to move that forward. And you know, this was a question about your area of improvement. So maybe you've done great on all these other ones, and you know they're important, and you've given it that focus. But regardless of what it is, let's jump in and start talking about really what we came here to do today. So let's start with these three main areas. So as we go through the meat of our interaction today, we're going to be talking about engagement, and there are a few different elements to that. We're going to be talking about the adaptability of both your intake and your investigation process, and then we're going to be talking about people, which is really we believe the core of, you know, the reason for all of this stuff that we're doing. And as compliance elevates itself as a strategic leader in the organization, we think that that's really a linchpin and a big lever to move that forward. So let's jump into engagement. So in engagement, we're going to break this down into three different areas. So one is around awareness. One is around the convenience of your issue intake and case management process. And then the last one is trust. That trust one is a big one. So we're going to cap off engagement talking about that. So as we go into this first piece around awareness, we want everyone to be understanding that as we're talking about engagement, employees might not chase you down or even trust you as an organization or as the person on the other end of intake. So being aware of the ability to report, you know, an employee knowing that there's a process is really only the beginning. Everyone is trapped in what I like to call this attention-starved maze in our current economy and our culture. And you know, they have notifications coming on their phone, they got the TV blaring all the time, you know, they have their inbox that's burying them and all of that. So you know, if you think about this in the context of, you know, your quote unquote customer, the employee who you want to engage in this process, your training or a poster that you put up in the corner of a building or your annual reminder is really just another buzzing request for attention. And we will encourage everyone to be thinking through, how can you remove obstacles? How can you make this less of a maze for someone to engage with you, and either make it easier for them to remember or easier for them to jump in and take part in the process? So moving on to the next set, is how easy is it for someone to communicate and deliver the information that is really going to drive your improvement and your action? How do they have to climb a mountain to bring this message to you? And how easy is it for them to deliver that information to you, the people who really care? So, you can think through things as such as what different avenues do they have to report on? Do you have, they can do it in person in a hotline, or do you also have a web form? Do you have text messaging enabled, integrated into your case management system so that people can engage however they want? And what you want to do is make it so that when someone gets over those first two hurdles of, I know about it and I'm willing to do it, you want to make sure that that next step is as easy as possible and also as flexible as possible for someone's personality or their culture, or whatever would make them choose one format or another. So you want to remove those mountains and make it so that somebody can easily give you the information that you need to get started. And then the next set here is, let's talk about trust. So in my opinion, within our company culture and then within all of the clients that we serve here, you really cannot ever stop building trust. And you can never assume that people's trust in you is more based on how you are and how you are and how much you care, versus the challenge that a lot of employees, their trust of compliance or of the company is built on some archetype that they have based on things that they heard before, or maybe an experience that they had in another company or with a manager. They have this archetype of, well, managers are like this, or capital M management is only going to do this, or when people are in power, or even just the HR and compliance program is just going to do this much. And that trust is a really critical piece to, once you have that awareness and that you remove those mountains for engagement, there's going to be this step where someone says, okay, should I really say something about this? And I was really surprised as I started getting involved in our operations here at Compliance Line and got trained as a risk specialist and was on phone calls with callers. I knew how important compliance was. I knew all the things that we had in place about, not tracking phone numbers and not recording calls, and, being very serious about protecting anonymity. How someone will call up and they'll go through a list of 20 questions trying to think of all the different ways that someone might be lying to them. And they're going to ask, well, how do I know that you don't know where I am? And do I have to say this and all of that? And it just represented to me the deep mistrust that most people have of just companies. And it may not be you personally or your company, but just this concern that, hey, I want to speak up. I'd like this to change either for my benefit or someone else's. But in order to do that, I really need to trust that someone is going to honor my confidentiality, or even just do something with this thing that I'm kind of sticking my neck out for. So, we talked about removing obstacles, making sure that it's easier for people to report, removing the mountains that people have to climb in order to actually get the information there, and also removing that fear and doubt so that people can build that trust. So let's take a pause for a minute and let's talk about your next action. If you were one of the people who answered that poll and this engagement piece was important to you, or just if some of the things that we're talking about seem like something that you can sharpen up on, we love to give you ways that you can just leave this webinar and go make a difference in your team. So on that awareness piece, you might want to think about reviewing your current or your prior communication. What have you done to tell people about this? And that's going to give you a starting point to think about, okay, how could this be stronger? Should it have a refresh? And then also on awareness, you might want to consider either a major overhaul or just kind of a reminder refresh about these things. And getting back to that that attention-starved nature of how people are these days, you want to think about how you can make that relevant and engaging, and something that is going to be top of mind when one of these issues come up. So on convenience, we're still in engagement here. So you might want to find one way to make it easier for someone to remember, be proactive, and make sure that you're talking to them about this before they have an issue. I was just on a podcast with Tom Fox, and he was talking about how people had a magnet for the fridge so that people in someone's home could say, hey, well, you've been complaining about this problem at work. Why don't you call that number? things like that can really help make a difference. And how can you make it more convenient for people to report? So that might be a new method like a web form or texting or something else. And then on trust, you can proactively in your communication address those common misconceptions, and then you can also improve your organization's commitment to resolution, and that's going to get a cycle of trust going where someone reports something and something actually happens about it and they know about it, and that's going to build that trust as well. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Hopefully you were thinking about what your next action is. We talked about engagement, and let's talk about adaptability. So how does your process change and adapt to the situation of the issue, the severity of the issue, or just the culture locally for an area where someone's in, or for your whole company? So we're going to be talking about intake, routing, investigations, and data. A bunch of people said that investigations are an area that you want to improve on, so hopefully we got some good stuff for you coming up. So we want to make sure that compliance leaders don't let an over-reliance on process and structure subvert your real goals. So what are those real goals? You want to protect your people. We as leaders want to build a stronger culture, and ethics experts are always trying to be supportive of the company fulfilling the mission that it has. So the first step for this is that piece around your intake. So there are people who are calling about issues that are caused by other people, and the problems are borne by people in the organization, and they expect that the solutions are going to be driven by people as well. And an overly cold process where you're over relying on, hey, we have to answer these things in this order and this is the only way that you can go, is going to lead you to be less adaptable, versus when you can have a caring person on the other end of the line who is walking with them, who lets them kind of get off track, or kind of brings them back to the story that's at hand. That's going to lead to a lot more effectiveness, and that's going to lead to a much better interaction throughout the entire process, including follow-up investigations and resolutions, than someone that is super tech forward, or it's a call center that's just rushed and focused on production and rushing to complete a call. There are the same things that you can do on a web form to make it adaptive and make it change based on the things that people are reporting and things like that. But really, you want to make sure that you're caring for people on every intake method, and not just caring for the boxes that you have to check, or kind of the legal guidance that you have. So let's move on to the second piece on routing. So if you have an over reliance on process, then you're going to make sure that everything gets reviewed and everything gets that triage that might slow up your ultimate resolution of the issue. So when an issue comes in and it rolls off that conveyor belt, is it on the right person's plate or in the right person's inbox, or does it get bounced around to a few people? And you want to think about how can you set either processes that you manage around, or specific settings within your tech platform, to make sure that whether it's the location or the severity or the the category of the issue or whatever it is, make sure that those go to the right person. And there are a lot of things that we can do for automation through our technology to help that. And there are also some things that you can just think through with your team, so that when someone's going through their list, they can pick out a few of the things that, okay, someone else is going to have to look at this before I take the next step, and they can move that along, with the goal the whole time of getting these to the right people as quickly as possible. And you want the right person assigned to the right issue, and that's going to move these things along. So the next piece of adaptability is, let's talk about investigations. A bunch of people are interested in this. If you have an over reliance on process, you're going to be making sure that the investigation is driven by the investigator, or maybe even the person who assigned it. And they're going to say, I need this, I need to get this information, you need to answer this thing to me. When really, if you're just ticking those boxes and filling in data, you're probably not going to get all the information that you need. And we've seen, there's a lot of guidance around best practices from people who do investigations and interviews and things like that, that if you flex your approach to consider the severity of the issue, the urgency, the emotional toll that maybe someone has been dealing with, then you're going to have these engaging interviews that consider all the context of the issue that you're investigating. You're going to get better information, your investigations are going to go smoother, and ultimately your people are going to be getting better care faster. And then finally, the last one in the set is your data. So big data is everywhere. Everyone loves data and analytics, at least they say they do. So if you have an over reliance on process, then you're going to be doing maybe a bunch of unnecessary reports. And you should be asking, what is your data enabling you to do? Are your reporting and analytics, if you're too process focused, maybe it's just another item on your list and it keeps you focused on your to-do list and you're always wrestling spreadsheets. Whereas if you have this adaptability built into it, then your reporting should be set up so that it frees you up to step past the questions of what's going on and step into a place where you can create thoughtful responses, you can create adjustments within your team and your processes, and also ultimately you can solve these problems. So you want to be thinking about, if you're a compliance leader, how do you identify hotspots and tailor your policies and your action toward improvement? Okay, so let's start talking about next action. Compliance leaders always want to be thinking about how to move things forward and how to make things better. So within adaptability, within intake, maybe think about training or specifying a certain amount of flexibility for special cases. That can be both for your vendor, if you have an external hotline or someone managing your web forms, or internally to your team for a manager who might take a compliance issue or someone on the compliance team. You might want to look at routing. So how can you, within your system or within a defined standard operating procedure, accelerate your triage so that you're not waiting for someone to get to their inbox or their notifications before handing it off to somebody. So then in investigations, we can dig into this more in the Q&A at the end. You might want to offer some guided questions that vary by issue type, or allow your team to get some training or just some tips and refreshers on some of those investigations best practices. It's something that we help our clients with, and that we do a lot of training and development for our internal team around. And then finally, that data piece, right? So there's power in good data. How can you improve the access that you or other people who care about it have to your data and your reports, or just the readability of that? Are you flipping through a table of 100 items, or are you getting a summary that is illustrating the key issues that are going to drive decisions and actions? And as compliance leaders, we always want to be reviewing trends and identifying hotspots. So how can we set up our data and set up our analytics so that we're getting closer to that action? So here it is, everyone. We've talked about engagement and adaptability, and we're going to get to people now. So there are some great things in here, and I'm excited to talk to you about having empathetic interviews in your intake, having coordinated follow-up throughout your process, having a focused resolution process and how you can get gains by considering people through that, and then ultimately how putting people at the center of everything you do is going to make you as an HR leader more of a strategic driver and an authority and influencer throughout your organization. So let's jump in. So we're doing intake, and as an ethics expert, we never want to mistake the risks and regulations that we are managing around for the people that they're meant to protect. Whether it's a government regulation or a policy at the company or just something we have to do, ultimately these things all end up benefiting people by keeping them safe, giving us a better culture and things like that. So as compliance leaders, we should always have that front and center. And obviously it's always challenging to kind of dig in and get focused on the work. So the first piece we'll talk about is having empathetic interviews. We should always be trying to engage empathetically while still avoiding validating or admitting fault. So in this process, we're leaders, we're compliance experts, and we want information, but what does that reporter want? They have been dealing with something, and what is that? How does your intake consider what the burden that's been on them and what it's taken for them to speak up? So, there are things that you can do by, letting them get it out, or asking thoughtful questions, and, being caring in the way that your intake professionals talk to them, rather than rushing them through and saying, hey, that doesn't make any sense to me, or whatever it is. So how can you make sure that your intake is empathetic without, of course, you're not going to validate it and say, yeah, he probably did do that to you or whatever it is. You don't have to admit fault, but there are a lot of ways where you can be empathetic and you can make sure that the people, their training, and the process that they go through really consider the person on the other end of that phone, the other end of that web form, or obviously sitting across the desk. So the next piece is this coordinated follow-up. So once you get the information, you want to address the issue. But if you're overly focused on risk and regulations, you might get caught up in that work instead of really making sure that you're having the right impact and perception. So as compliance leaders, we want to manage those handoffs throughout the process and manage all of that follow-up with an eye toward employee perception. A lot of times we may have bigger questions or bigger accountability up to the board or the executive team and be focused on getting answers to them, where really the way that we are as ethics experts are going to become the leaders that we want to be and know we can be in our organization is when there's a groundswell of cultural engagement, where people trust us as compliance leaders, where people engage with HR in a big way. That a lot of people are leaving some gains on the table for this is when you're managing those handoffs, you're managing those legal checks, and you're managing those different layers of investigations. Think about what messages you're sending, both spoken and unspoken, by the way you do that. For example, if someone calls in and they issue a report and not all of the information gets documented, and then someone goes in to do an investigation and is asking all of the same questions, that's very frustrating for an employee who says, hey, you really kind of put my neck on the line here, and I already told you all about this, maybe it was someone else other than the investigator, but I already said this, why do I have to go through this again? And some things like that, where if you have better coordination through this lattice work of different investigations, different follow-up, different checks of how deep we have to go into something, you can really make sure that that employee experience is better, and that's going to get you a lot more support, and it's also going to get you a lot more action throughout the full investigation and follow-up process. So we got two more here. One is around this focused resolution. So if you're overly focused on risk and regulations, you're going to hold back what you communicate. Maybe you're just going to say, okay, we did something with your issue. I'm confirming that I received the issue. What we really want to do as HR leaders is circle back with clear resolutions that make the people who join this process glad to have contributed. So what that's going to look like is, how do you handle that communication? Is it solely defined by being defensible, making sure you don't get in trouble, confidentiality, and things like that? Those should be part of the solution that you scope. But in addition to those being valid, has someone thought of the person who enabled this whole process? You would not have been able to address this issue if that person hadn't spoken up. They stepped up, and what kind of payoff do they get? So do they get a thank you at least? That's pretty easy to say thank you for reporting. Do they get some sense of the reasons why this determination was made? There are always things that you can't disclose, but there are usually some things that you can. And do you have a way to, even if they were anonymous, invite them to help some more, and hey, tell us if you see this again, or if you have more information, please get back to us. Those types of things can go a really long way for this being a process of collaboration with the people who are contributing to your success, rather than something that you just kind of take the ball and run with it and they never know what happened to it again. So you really want to circle back with those clear resolutions and make them glad to have contributed. So finally, this is what we here at Compliance Line get really excited about, and it's helping elevate HR, compliance, and GRC experts to be the transforming cultural contributors that we all know is going to change the world and change your culture. So we believe that compliance is not just rules and regulations. Compliance is culture, and if you want to make a bigger difference and you want to influence the direction of your company as an HR leader, for you to be proud of the thing that you're a part of, what is that path? So some people think that that's having more budget and getting a seat at the board level decisions table and having more influence. And we believe that all of those things are going to come when we as HR and compliance leaders mobilize people through excellence in ethics, not the other way around. And if you can help push your programs past this defensibility mindset, past the hard ROI of the 2010s, to galvanizing and serving the people, then that ROI, that defensibility, and ultimately that influence at the senior level is all going to follow. So a big key that we want to put at the end of this full discussion is that as compliance leaders, we want to be the transformation that we see needs to happen in our organization before it's demanded of us, before everyone else buys into it possibly. And if you can do that by making sure that you have a good culture on your team, making sure that you have this consideration beyond the strict processes and the to-dos to the people who are really involved there, then that effectiveness is going to have no choice but to get the attention of the senior team, and we're all going to elevate not just our role as influencers in the company, but really we're going to elevate the ability for the compliance and ethics team to protect people, to build a good culture, and help our teams fulfill their missions. So with that, let's talk about some application for this people section. So for empathetic interviews, we encourage everyone to test your hotline and test it at peak times. Don't just call when it's probably dead and you might get a quick answer. Think about what it's like for someone calling on their break in the middle of the day where there are a lot of calls going on and they're waiting for a long time or they're getting rushed off the phone. Check that and use that as a quality control. Check it once a month or once a quarter. It's worth you spending 10 or 15 minutes on it. You also might want to train or demand considerate interviews from your internal team or from your vendor, depending on how you kind of set up your resources. You're going to influence that a few different ways. So on this coordinated follow-up, you want to audit your response rates. How frequently are you getting back to people, and what portion of your total issues are getting the follow-up that they need? And then review your protocols for that follow-up and make sure that if there's a step that you can take out that unnecessarily delays or confuses the process, that's not only going to make it more efficient, but it's going to help you focus on the people rather than, oh, this has been sitting somewhere for 10 days. I have 2 more days to close it. I need to rush through this investigation. So on that focus resolution, review your substantiation rates. How many of your issues are actually substantiated? You find out that the issue reported actually happened or something like that. And try to provide some exception guidance to the people who are dealing with those resolutions. So what caused you to make an exception to this, or what are our standards for deciding, hey, we can't really do anything on this, that can help you collaborate and get better information or fix the process. And this is one of my favorite ones. It's one that we push a lot around here within our company. Try to celebrate one win maybe this quarter. This might be a takeaway for you where you say, hey, there's a lot that we ask of other departments and that we ask of employees. How can we celebrate our team and celebrate the way that one employee spoke up and this thing got fixed, and now no one else is dealing with this problem? That those things might happen in customer service a lot, and maybe sometimes in just kind of the more broad HR reporting things. But how can you, as a compliance team, obviously, without divulging too much information, but really show your impact, not just on a numbers basis? That's obviously important and it's part of the game. But how can you show it on a cultural basis and tell everyone, hey, this person spoke up, and yes, we do care, and they didn't get in trouble, and we made a change because we care about this stuff. Celebrating one win can start bringing a different conversation in. And then finally, how can you be thinking and kind of getting ahead of the game as an HR leader on this strategic focus? So you may be able to warm up some overly strict legal precautions that came from the legal team, and they have that certain lens to do it. You want to keep those in consideration and say, well, what if we said it this way? Can we at least just say thank you or something like that? This is another really powerful thing for compliance teams. Build one cross-functional ally. A lot of times we're working in our silos and we're maybe working with HR, and then we're trying to get some people to complete their training. How can you help someone in operations or in sales or in IT or whatever it is, see how working together is really going to make their job easier, make their team more effective, and see the way that compliance impacting culture makes everybody's lives better. So we went through a bunch of things today. Through engagement, we talked about removing obstacles, removing those mountains for people to get you information, and removing the fear and doubt that you kind of have to assume a bunch of employees are going to have. In adaptability, We want to encourage everyone to care for the people on every different type of intake method. Make sure that the right person gets the right issue as quickly as possible. You want to have engaging interviews that consider all of the context of the issue. And as HR leaders, we want to identify hotspots and tailor our policies and our follow-up action for improvement. And then finally, in this people category, as ethics experts, we want to engage empathetically without validating or admitting fault, of course. As leaders, we want to manage handoffs and follow-up with an eye toward that employee perception, not just what you have to do with the information, but where it came from. We want to circle back with clear resolutions that make people glad to have contributed. And then also, let's all take a step forward this quarter in understanding that cultural transformation must come from us, the ethics experts. So with that, I want to remind you that, throughout this presentation, we reviewed over 25 different ways that you can make improvements. And hopefully there's something there that you can start with this week to make your issue intake and case management process across these 3 key areas a place where ethics experts can have a profound impact on your company, your culture, and the world. So we're going to do a quick poll and see where you want to take action. So this may be similar to the first question, but why don't you take us into the poll, Amanda?
Yeah, so previously we asked where you think your biggest area of improvement is. And now that Gio's kind of gone through all of those areas, let's see if that's changed. So where do you want to take action? And while we are waiting on all of our responses to come in, I just want to remind everybody that you can absolutely leave us a comment or ask a question as we're coming down to the final 10 minutes of the presentation. We just want to make sure that we are opening that up for everybody.
Yeah, I'll give a little plug for Amanda here. If you guys don't know about the Compliance Live podcast, Amanda co-hosts the Compliance Live podcast. You can find it on all of your favorite podcast networks. She does an awesome job. So if you've enjoyed the great job that she's done helping us today, check her out. Every 2 weeks, she launches a new show about making ethics experts more productive. And I'm a big fan of it. You should check it out.
Thanks for the plug.
There you go, Amanda.
That's so nice of you. Yeah, Kaylin and I co-host, and we have so much fun, and we talk about so many relevant topics that are interesting and engaging, and we always love to hear feedback. So we're on all of your favorite podcast networks, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube. So check us out for that. So thanks for the plug. So we're going to go ahead and finish out the poll. We have 60% of you guys that are with us on this presentation have voted. I'm going to go ahead and close it, and then I'm going to share our results. So the question was, where do you want to take action? And you have told us that 39% of you, this is much closer poll than it was last time.
Yeah.
So 39% of you want to focus on people, 34%, very close second for engagement, and 26% have said that adaptability is their goal for taking action.
Great. Thanks for that, and thank you everyone for jumping in that poll. Obviously, these are all ways that we can all have a mindset of continuous improvement about. As Amanda mentioned, we'll be sending this around in case you want these slides or some of these tips. And please feel free to engage with us after the webinar is over. We're happy to help and give some more detail around this. This has been 3 ways to make issue intake and case management more effective, brought to you by Compliance Line. Compliance Line is a company that delivers compliance excellence as a partner who cares. We are client first. We believe in accountability and responsiveness, and we believe that makes you better at your job. We try to serve everybody with excellence, and servanthood is really at the core of everything we do. Here are a few different things that we offer and some of our clients, but we have a few minutes left. I'd love if anybody else has some questions now that we're done with that shameless plug. And if you guys have any questions, you can throw them in the chat, and we're happy to talk a little bit more about it.
So we did have a great comment that I just wanted to share with you, Gio, and everybody. We had a comment from Vincent. Thank you. He says, thank you for this presentation. A key takeaway for him is the need to emphasize the importance of having a compliance culture. So great. Yeah, thanks for that
Vincent.
comment,
Let's be buddies, man. We can talk about that a lot. it really can be, it needs to be a core driver of the full company culture, and having a sense that compliance as a team needs to be strong on this. And if we do that, our heart to serve people, protect people, and fulfill our mission can really spread throughout the company. And the influence that we as HR, compliance, and GRC leaders have can really make a difference in the world. So I so much appreciate you sharing some of your day with us today. I'm glad to see that this was helpful to some people. We will send this around. Please reference it, ask us questions, share it with people. This is just one way that we want to help make a difference in the world, and we'd love to partner with you in doing that if we can be helpful at all.
Yeah, we just had a question come in actually as you finished up your thank yous. Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting question. The question comes from Sean, and they ask, how does texting work as an intake method, and can it be anonymous? So that's a great question.
It is a great question. So were they asking what text messages are?
Yeah.
No, just yeah, so the way it works, it's maybe draw an analogy to a web form, right? On a web form, you go to a website and then you type in some information in different fields. In text messaging, you text a phone number, and then instead of typing in different fields, that you're going to get a reply in that text message that says something like, hi, you got to the right place. We're this company. Please report your issue. When did it happen? And then you say it happened 2 days ago, and then it'll send you another text message after you reply, and it says, what was the, what type of issue was it, or what happened, and then you send your reply, and then you can have kind of a back and forth kind of chat through that text message. And then just like you have fields on a web form that might show up in your case management system or just get dropped into an email summary for you, each of those messages, that question and answer that happened via text message is going to get put into your case management system or sent to you. And we like to think of that as, you're kind of trading off a higher level of convenience for a lower level of some of that interaction. For example, if someone's face-to-face, then you're going to be getting a much richer interaction. But that text message is potentially going to give you, everyone's talking about the millennials and they're always texting and all of that. You know what that's like, Amanda?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, thanks for following. Yeah, actually, we talk about this on Compliance Live, and the generational differences and how it contributes to intake methods. Like, baby boomers may be more comfortable with walking into an office or a telephone call, whereas Gen Xers may be more comfortable with an email or an online form.
Yep.
So I think it's really there are generational connotations to it, but it's also, what do I have at my disposal right now?
Exactly. And yeah, it can be both of those things. And that's part of why you might want to increase your engagement by looking at what different options people have, because there might be times where, obviously someone can't walk into the office or they don't have time to, to do the full report on the phone, but they could kind of text it on the bus on their way to work or something like that. So hopefully that answered your question. If you have more questions about texting, please get in touch with us and we'd be happy to answer some more questions about that.
So we actually, based on that part of the conversation, we had some questions come in. So they're also, and Shelly and Sean both asked the same question, so I'll ask them at the same time. Does Compliance Line have support or offer support for a text messaging feature?
We do. So it's actually getting piloted by a few customers right now. And within a month or two, we're going to be rolling out kind of an official campaign about it. But we do have that functioning. It wraps into our compliance management system. And what's nice about it is your existing 800 number or your toll-free number, you, in most cases, don't even have to change that number. People can text to that number, and then you're going to get that kind of dialogue going on the text message. So we do offer that. It's part of the responsiveness that we have, and we've had people asking about it, and we figured out a way. Oh, I think I didn't answer this question about it being anonymous. So obviously, the person is texting the number, to get a text message back somewhere in the system. That has to be something knows that number, but we make sure that there's a firm wall between that and our case management system and what you see. So they can be anonymous via text message. They have the option to give their name if they want to, but we're not collecting or scraping any information about their call. And like I said, you can report that. Once we set it up for you, you can report that to your existing toll-free number, and it's really a pretty easy add-on, and it's a nice thing around some of the other things we talked about to get some new communication out, have something fresh offered by the compliance team, and get people to maybe raise their eyebrows. Wow, that compliance team's pretty cool. They got text messaging now.
It's all text messaging, right? That's
Very
the next.
cool.
We're diligently working on how to be able to read minds.
Yes.
So that's next. That's on the
coming
next
up.
frontier.
Yeah. The robots are going to take over, and then we'll just do that.
Right. Text messaging. The next frontier is just really a chip in your brain for mind reading for compliance issues.
Yeah, and I feel like compliance would love that.
It's the next logical step.
Uh-huh.
Right. So this is your last opportunity. We appreciate everybody that's stayed with us so far, and this is your last opportunity to kind of ask any questions of Geo. I'm really excited about the texting feature. I think that's really a great way to reach more people, and maybe people that are uncomfortable talking on the phone.
Right.
You said like the millennial thing, and looked at me cross-eyed, but yeah, you're really right. Millennials are more of a text generation, and so it's easier for them to communicate in that way. So yeah. I think it opens up like just tons of possibilities for engagement and letting your employees know that you care enough to offer them these options.
Yeah, and that's part of what we're doing as ethics experts is we're here to serve our team, and we should meet them where they are. So rather than telling everyone, hey, you have to go talk to your manager to do this, we want to give them some options, because the more comfortable they are, the more they're going to share, and the more we can take action to protect them and support our mission. So thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. It's been our honor to serve you this way and provide some of these tips. We would love to follow up with you and provide, any additional insights or help that we can. Regardless of whether we do that follow-up, I really hope that you can take one thing. Hopefully you wrote down that next action for yourself, and you can take something to your team and say, hey, here's how we can take a step or a half step forward, start it this week, get it done within the next month, and you're going to be better off, and you're going to be a better HR leader and a better compliance leader because of it.
Right. Gio, thanks so much for taking the time, and you can reach out to us at insights@complianceline.com, and thanks for joining us. Please make sure to like and share on social media.
All right, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks.